For ancient royals, beauty wasn't just vanity, it was survival. But behind the flawless skin and silken hair was a world of pain. Today you'll discover 5 royal beauty rituals so cruel they'll make you grateful for acne. In the imperial courts of ancient China, beauty wasn't just admired, it was demanded. And for empresses, concubines, and noblewomen, the pressure to appear flawless was immense. Their status, power, and even survival often hinged on the emperor's favor. And to keep it, they turned to beauty rituals that were anything but glamorous. One of the most prized ingredients? Crushed pearls. Not just a sprinkle, not a delicate dusting, but thick layers of powdered pearl were applied daily to the face. These pearls were believed to represent purity, wealth, and spiritual harmony. But the ritual was far from peaceful. Women would grind them manually for hours, creating a fine white powder they'd mix with oils and apply like a mask, thick, chalky, and suffocating to the skin. But crushed pearl wasn't the most dangerous part. To achieve the prized ghost white complexion, a symbol of nobility and purity, many women resorted to something far more sinister: lead-based powders. Lead whiteners offered a smoother finish, but slowly poisoned the wearer. Symptoms were insidious. Skin would blister and flake. Hair would fall out in clumps. And as the lead seeped deeper into their blood, they began to suffer tremors, migraines, organ damage, even madness. But the cruel irony, the more they suffered, the more makeup they needed to cover it. One concubine, known in palace records only as Lady Jen, was said to have been so devoted to her ritual that when her health began to decline, she refused to stop. She appeared before the emperor pale as a ghost, her lips trembling from nerve damage, her fingers bruised and purple beneath her sleeves. When he asked her if she was ill, she reportedly smiled and said, "I only suffer to remain beautiful for you." Within a year, she was dead. And she wasn't alone. Hundreds of palace women suffered similar fates, their illnesses blamed on everything but the beauty products slowly killing them. Behind the silk robes and painted fans was a quiet war for survival, and in that war, beauty was both a weapon and a curse. The queens of ancient Egypt are still hailed today as icons of beauty and power. Cleopatra, Nefertiti, names that echo across time, but behind the seductive gaze and regal posture was a daily ritual soaked in poison, obsession, and death. Egyptian beauty was sacred. It wasn't just cosmetic. It was spiritual, political, and even magical. To the royals, looking divine meant being divine, and so the queens painted themselves like living gods. The eyes were the centerpiece, dramatic, elongated, framed in black coal so intense it could stop a man in his tracks. But the ingredients were a lethal cocktail. The coal used to line their eyes and brows was made from a mixture of lead, soot, and galena, a form of lead sulfide. Daily application meant daily exposure. And then came the malachite, a shimmering green pigment crushed into fine dust, applied across the eyelids and cheeks to give an otherworldly radiance. But malachite is copper carbonate, and when absorbed through the skin, it begins to corrode from within. Skin rashes, nausea, and eventually, organ damage. One record from the temple archives mentions Queen Tusret, the last ruler of Egypt's 19th dynasty. Her servants noted that she rarely smiled by her final years. Her hands trembled when she held her sacred mirror. Her skin, once praised as moonlit ivory, had become blotched, irritated, and thin. Still, she never stopped. Her makeup was her armor, her paint, her power. But perhaps the most disturbing ritual of all was mercury baths. Reserved for only the wealthiest, some queens would soak in mercury vapor or rub mercury ointments into their skin, believing it could maintain youth. What it did instead was slowly destroy the nervous system. Hallucinations, mood swings, insomnia, madness. Some historians now speculate that the divine visions described by several royal women may not have been messages from the gods, but the delusions of mercury poisoning, and yet, in the end, they were praised, worshipped in death as they were in life, their suffering buried beneath gold sarcophagi and timeless legend. The queens of Egypt may have looked immortal, but their beauty was a slow, intentional kind of death. To be beautiful in the Elizabethan court was to be ghostly, pale as porcelain, almost corpse-like, a look so unnatural it was considered divine, and no one embodied this deadly elegance more than Queen Elizabeth Thuren herself. After surviving a bout of smallpox in 1572, Elizabeth was left with deep scars on her face. But in the public eye, the Virgin Queen could never appear flawed, so she turned to Venetian ceruse, a thick white paste made from white lead and vinegar. Every morning her maids layered it across her face, neck, and chest, erasing blemishes, pores, and eventually, her own skin. It wasn't makeup. It was a mask, a prison. Ceruse seeped into the bloodstream. It caused headaches, stomach pain, and over time, skin that cracked and bled beneath the paint. But Elizabeth didn't stop. Neither did the women of her court. The whiter your skin, the higher your class. The more you suffered, the more elegant you appeared. In one preserved letter, a lady-in-waiting writes, "Her Majesty grows weary of the mask, for her cheeks beneath do sting, but the kingdom must not see her falter." And it didn't stop there. To achieve the wide, high foreheads that were in vogue, women plucked their hairlines, sometimes up to 2 inches back. They ripped out their natural hair with tweezers or burned it off with caustic paste. Eyebrows were shaved off entirely. The result? A smooth, bald canvas above the eyes, an eerie, doll-like appearance that seemed regal and just slightly inhuman. But perhaps the most dangerous practice of all was in the eyes. Belladonna, meaning beautiful woman in Italian, was a deadly nightshade extract. Just a drop in the eyes dilated the pupils, giving them a soft, dewy, wide look, seductive, innocent, entrancing. But belladonna also blurred vision, caused dry eyes, and over time, permanent blindness. By the end of her reign, Queen Elizabeth was nearly unrecognizable beneath her layers of lead paint, false hair, and heavy gowns. She had become a living portrait, iconic, untouchable, and entirely alone. Even in death, her face was painted for the grave, pale, ageless, untouched by time. But beneath the white veil lay the truth. Beauty in the Elizabethan court was not a gift. It was a curse. In the glittering palaces of the Mughal Empire, beauty was sacred, a blend of art, seduction, and subtle danger. The royal harem wasn't just a place of luxury. It was a battlefield of appearances, where every woman fought to catch and keep the emperor's gaze. And to win this war, they turned to rituals that were as intoxicating as they were lethal. One of the most iconic was kohl, the jet-black eyeliner worn around the eyes. But this wasn't just makeup. The traditional kohl used by Mughal queens and concubines was often made from galena, a mineral rich in lead sulfide. Applied daily, it gave their eyes a deep, hypnotic quality, dramatic, almond-shaped, eternal. But with prolonged use, lead slowly poisoned the wearer. It could cause tremors, fatigue, even hallucinations. One Persian account claimed, "The woman with the darkest eyes began to speak to spirits in the garden." Whether madness or myth, no one questioned her beauty. And then there was henna, not just for hands and feet, but as a ritual of transformation. Queens would soak for hours in baths scented with rose and saffron, while their attendants applied intricate henna designs that told stories of love, power, and longing. It was believed that the darker the henna stain, the deeper the love between husband and wife. And so some women added acidic substances to their paste, lime juice, urine, even ground glass. to force the color deeper into their skin. The results were breathtaking, but often came with bleeding, burning, and lifelong scars hidden beneath their silks. But perhaps the most sinister ritual of all was perfume. Mughal royalty were obsessed with fragrance. Attars, oils, and incenses filled the halls. But for those who wished to eliminate rivals or punish unfaithfulness, poisoned perfumes were a whispered secret. Legend speaks of Merunisa, the Empress Nur Jahan herself, who allegedly used a perfume laced with a rare toxin, one that could be absorbed through the skin or inhaled in small doses, slowly weakening her enemies over time. Nothing was ever proven, of course. But when one of her husband's concubines was found dead, eyes glazed, mouth still smiling, the only thing witnesses recalled was the overpowering scent of jasmine. In the Mughal court, beauty could elevate a woman to godlike status, but it could just as easily become her weapon, or her curse. In the age of Queen Elizabeth I, beauty was political. Every freckle, every blemish, every wrinkle was seen as a crack in the image of royal perfection, and for the women of court, especially the Queen herself, that image had to be flawless, no matter the cost. Let's start with the face. Elizabeth was known for her pale, ghostly complexion, considered the ideal of aristocratic beauty. But this wasn't natural. Her whiteness came from a toxic blend known as Venetian ceruse, a foundation made of white lead and vinegar. Women applied it daily to mask smallpox scars, uneven skin, or age spots. But with every layer, the poison seeped deeper into the skin. Bleed caused everything from skin corrosion to paralysis. Over time, the skin underneath would rot, forcing them to apply even more ceruse just to hide the damage, in an endless cycle of slow decay. One courtier once whispered, "Her Majesty's beauty is eternal, but her flesh grows thinner by the month." Then there was the infamous belladonna, or deadly nightshade. Women would drop it into their eyes to enlarge their pupils, giving them a glassy, romantic stare. But belladonna didn't just make you look dreamy. It blurred vision, caused heart palpitations, and could even induce hallucinations. Some noble women began seeing shadows that weren't there. Others swore their dead husbands spoke to them. But in the candle-lit halls of Tudor England, madness was mistaken for mystique. And the lips? A rich red pout was essential. To get it, they used a mixture of cinnabar, a brilliant red pigment made from mercury sulfide. Like lead, mercury was devastating to the body. It caused tremors, memory loss, and teeth to fall out. Yet every portrait from that era shows women smiling through the pain, a mask of allure over a reality of agony. In the end, Elizabeth died at the age of 69, having refused to let anyone see her without makeup in her final years. Her corpse was said to be caked in powder, her face more mask than flesh, her beauty preserved, her suffering erased. But behind the powdered cheeks and crimson lips was a truth no one dared speak. To be beautiful in Elizabethan England was to slowly poison yourself for the crown. They say beauty is pain, but for ancient royalty it was often poison, blood, and ritualistic agony. Still wish you lived like a queen?